The fog of fear. The small town of Elmridge was always shrouded in an eerie, unnatural fog. It had a history steeped in mystery, with whispers of unexplained disappearances that dated back centuries. Emily, a curious journalist, and Jack, a local historian, couldn't resist the allure of the town's enigmatic past. One gloomy morning, Emily arrived in Elmridge to meet with Jack. The fog hung low, obscuring the town's old, crumbling buildings. As she stepped out of her car, Emily couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It was as if the fog itself had eyes that followed her every move. Jack greeted her with a somber expression. "Welcome to Elmridge, Emily," he said, his voice laden with a sense of foreboding. As they delved into the town's history, Emily and Jack uncovered old town records that spoke of a curse that had plagued Elmridge for centuries. It was said to have been cast by a vengeful witch, condemning the town to eternal fog and terror. The more they researched, the more they realized that the disappearances were not just random events. There was a pattern, a sinister connection that linked the victims to the curse. It was as if the town itself conspired to keep its secrets buried in the fog. One evening, as Emily and Jack walked through the dense fog, they had their first encounter with a shadowy creature. It emerged from the mist with a chilling presence, its form ever shifting and indistinct. Its eyes gleamed with malevolence as it reached out for them, only to vanish into the fog once more. The encounter left Emily and Jack shaken, but it also ignited their determination to uncover the truth. They believed that there was a way to break the curse and free Elmridge from the perpetual fog of fear. Their search led them deep into the town's forgotten catacombs, hidden beneath the old church. It was there that they discovered an ancient relic, a pendant that was said to hold the key to lifting the curse. The pendant bore an intricate design, a swirling vortex of darkness and light. But as they reached for the pendant, the ground beneath them trembled, and the catacombs began to collapse. Emily and Jack barely escaped with their lives, clutching the pendant tightly in their hands. With the pendant in their possession, Emily and Jack returned to the surface, determined to perform the ritual that would break the curse. As they stood in the heart of Elmridge, surrounded by the thick fog, they began to chant the incantation. The air grew heavy with tension as they recited the words, and the pendant's design began to glow with an otherworldly light. It seemed as if the very fabric of reality was unraveling around them. Suddenly, a monstrous entity emerged from the fog, its form grotesque and horrifying. It was the embodiment of the curse itself, a malevolent force that had terrorized Elmridge for centuries. Emily and Jack stood their ground, clutching the pendant and chanting the incantation with unwavering resolve. The monstrous entity writhed in agony, its form dissipating like smoke in the wind. As the curse lifted, the fog began to dissipate, revealing the town of Elmridge in the soft light of day. The townsfolk emerged from their homes, their faces etched with a mixture of relief and fear. But as Emily and Jack looked around, they couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The townsfolk's expressions were not those of innocent victims. They were filled with a sinister knowingness, as if they had been complicit in the curse all along. In a chilling twist, Emily and Jack realized that Elmridge had not been a victim of the curse, it had been a willing participant. The curse had served as a means of protecting the town's darkest secrets, hiding them away in the eternal fog. With the curse broken, the town's history began to unravel, revealing a long and disturbing history of deception and malevolence. The disappearances had not been random. They had been sacrifices to the curse, offerings to keep the town's secrets hidden. As Emily and Jack left Elmridge, they couldn't help but wonder if some secrets were best left buried in the fog of fear. The town had been forever changed, but the weight of its history would continue to haunt its residents, a reminder of the dangers of curiosity and the darkness that could lurk beneath the surface of even the most seemingly innocent places. Whispers in the walls. Sarah had always been drawn to the mysteries of the supernatural. She was a paranormal investigator, and her latest venture led her to the outskirts of town, an abandoned mansion with a dark reputation. The mansion had long been rumored to be haunted, but Sarah wasn't one to be deterred by ghost stories. She had brought along Alex, her skeptical cameraman, for the night. As they entered the decaying mansion, Sarah could feel a heavy presence in the air. The hallway was dimly lit, and eerie whispers seemed to emanate from the peeling wallpaper and creaking floorboards. Sarah's excitement was palpable, but Alex's skepticism was equally evident. "You really believe there's something here?" Alex asked as he adjusted his camera, trying to capture the eerie ambience. Sarah nodded, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. There's definitely something in this mansion. We just have to find out what it is. They decided to spend the night in the mansion, hoping to capture evidence of paranormal activity on camera. They set up their equipment in what had once been a grand, but now dilapidated, living room. As the hours passed, the mansion seemed to come alive with strange noises, whispers in the walls, the sound of footsteps on the staircase, and faint, distant laughter. Sarah and Alex followed the sounds, their cameras rolling. They climbed the grand staircase, their footsteps echoing through the empty halls. It was then that they discovered a hidden room, concealed behind a secret door that blended seamlessly with the wall. The room was unlike any other they had seen in the mansion. It was pristine, untouched by time. The walls were adorned with strange symbols, and a sense of unease settled over them. Sarah couldn't resist the urge to investigate further. She touched one of the symbols on the wall, and as she did, the room seemed to come alive with an eerie glow. The symbols danced and shifted, creating an otherworldly display. "What did you do?" Alex asked, his voice trembling with fear. Before Sarah could respond, the room began to warp and change. The walls closed in on them, and the symbols on the walls formed a sinister pattern. A deafening noise filled their ears, drowning out their screams. When the room returned to normal, they were left disoriented and terrified. The symbols on the wall had vanished, and they were trapped in the mansion's ever-shifting labyrinth. As they navigated the twisting corridors, Sarah and Alex realized that the mansion itself was a malevolent entity. It fed on their fear and confusion, shifting the walls and leading them deeper into its dark heart. Hours turned into days as they wandered through the endless maze of the mansion, their supplies dwindling and their hope fading. Sarah began to doubt her beliefs, and Alex's skepticism had turned into sheer terror. Just when they thought they were lost forever, they stumbled upon a room unlike any other, an opulent chamber filled with riches, as if it were a treasury hidden within the mansion. But the room's true occupant was not the mansion's owner. It was a monstrous entity that had been bound to the mansion by a curse. The entity emerged from the shadows, a grotesque amalgamation of shadows and despair. It spoke to them in haunting whispers, revealing the dark history of the mansion and its owner, a man who had dabbled in forbidden rituals to gain immortality but had paid a terrible price. The entity hungered for release, and it offered Sarah and Alex a choice: help it break free from the mansion's curse, or become lost in the labyrinth forever. Sarah and Alex knew they had no other option. With trembling hands, they followed the entity's instructions, performing a ritual that would finally free it from the mansion's grasp. As the last incantation was spoken, the mansion began to tremble and shake. The walls groaned, and the labyrinth collapsed in on itself, releasing Sarah and Alex from their nightmarish ordeal. They emerged from the mansion, battered and exhausted, but alive. The once abandoned mansion now stood in ruins, its malevolent presence gone forever. As they looked back at the crumbling mansion, Sarah and Alex couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. The experience had tested their beliefs and their skepticism, and they had come to realize that sometimes the supernatural was very real. The mansion's dark history had finally been revealed, and the entity had found its long-awaited release. Sarah and Alex may have escaped with their lives, but they carried with them the knowledge that the past never truly dies, and that some mysteries are better left unsolved. The silent streets. Mark had never seen a night like this. The town streets stretched out before him, deserted and shrouded in darkness. An eerie silence hung in the air, broken only by the distant sound of his own footsteps. He had been traveling for hours, but it felt like an endless night. With no destination in mind, Mark had wandered into this town, his car having broken down on a desolate road. He had hoped to find help, but the town seemed abandoned, as if its residents had vanished into thin air. As Mark trudged through the silent streets, a feeling of unease settled over him. He couldn't shake the sensation of being watched. He quickened his pace, trying to put distance between himself and the oppressive stillness that surrounded him. Suddenly, a shadowy figure appeared ahead of him, a silhouette in the darkness. It was the guide, a mysterious entity known only by name. The guide beckoned Mark to follow, and without thinking, he complied. The guide led Mark through a series of winding streets, each one more unsettling than the last. Mark's heart raced as he felt the presence of something unseen, something lurking in the shadows just out of sight. They turned a corner, and Mark felt a rush of cold air. He turned to see an entity, a shapeless darkness that seemed to hunger for him. He fled, chased by the unseen entity, his heart pounding in his chest. The guide led Mark to an old, dilapidated building. Inside, Mark discovered cryptic symbols etched into the walls. They glowed with an eerie light, illuminating the room in an unsettling, greenish hue. "What are these symbols?" Mark demanded, his voice quivering with fear. The guide remained silent, his eyes fixed on the symbols. Mark could feel the weight of their significance, the sense that they held the key to something beyond his understanding. As they continued to explore the building, Mark's perception began to blur. He saw strange illusions, horrifying visions of his past, distorted and nightmarish. It was as if the building itself was toying with his mind, weaving a web of terror around him. Mark's fear grew with each passing moment, and he realized that the guide was not leading him to safety but deeper into a nightmarish labyrinth. He confronted the guide, demanding answers. "Who are you? What is this place?" The guide finally spoke, his voice a chilling whisper. "I am the way out, Mark. But the path to salvation is not without its trials." With those cryptic words, the guide's true identity was revealed. He was not a savior but a harbinger of darkness, a guide through the terrors of the town. Mark knew he had to escape, to find his way back to the deserted streets and away from the guide's malevolent influence. He ran, his footsteps echoing through the building as he fled the illusions that pursued him. Finally, Mark burst out into the night, the silent streets stretching out before him once more. The guide's voice echoed in his mind, promising a way out, a path to escape the nightmarish town. But Mark had learned the price of salvation. He knew that the guide's promises were empty, and that the town held secrets too dark to comprehend. In the end, he chose to face the unknown, to wander the silent streets forever, haunted by the chilling events of that endless night. As Mark disappeared into the darkness, the guide watched, his enigmatic figure fading into the night. The town's deserted streets held their secrets, and the fear of the unknown would continue to lure lost travelers into its oppressive embrace. The Watcher in the Woods. The night was thick with darkness as a group of teenagers gathered around their campfire deep within the dense, foreboding forest. The trees loomed like silent giants, their branches rustling ominously in the wind. They had come to the woods for a weekend of camping, seeking adventure and the thrill of sharing spooky stories around the fire. As the flames crackled, Mark, the storyteller of the group, began to spin a tale of terror. "Legend has it," he said in hushed tones, "that a creature lurks in these very woods, a creature known as the Watcher in the Woods." His friends leaned in, their faces pale in the firelight. "What does it look like?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. Mark continued, "It's said to be tall and gaunt, with eyes that burn like embers. Its skin is as pale as moonlight, and it stalks its prey with eerie silence." Laughter followed Mark's story, but unease hung in the air. Little did they know that their campfire tale was about to become all too real. The night grew colder, and a sense of unease settled over the group. They heard rustlings in the underbrush, strange sounds that seemed to echo Mark's story. Branches snapped, and leaves rustled, but they couldn't see anything in the inky blackness beyond the reach of their fire. Just as fear began to creep into their hearts, a voice echoed from the shadows. "You shouldn't have come here," it whispered. The group of teenagers jolted to their feet, scanning the darkness for the source of the voice. They saw nothing but the oppressive blackness of the forest. "Who's there?" Mark called out, his voice quivering. A figure emerged from the trees, a local hermit named Elias, who had lived alone in the forest for years. His ragged appearance and wild eyes were enough to send shivers down their spines. Elias stepped closer to the firelight, his face etched with an expression of grim warning. "You've disturbed the creature," he said, his voice trembling with fear. "The Watcher in the Woods." Nervous laughter erupted from the group. They believed Elias to be a superstitious hermit, caught up in the same campfire tales they had been sharing. But the hermit's eyes were filled with a chilling sincerity. "You'll soon see," he muttered. As the night wore on, the teenagers heard strange noises in the forest, whispers in the wind, footsteps that seemed to follow them. Fear gnawed at their hearts as they huddled closer to the campfire, casting furtive glances into the dark. Suddenly, they caught a glimpse of movement, a shadowy figure lurking just beyond the trees. Its eyes glowed like fiery embers in the night, and its pale skin seemed to shimmer in the darkness. Panic swept through the group as they scrambled to their feet. The creature was real, and it was hunting them. They ran blindly through the forest, the creature's presence always just out of reach. Branches clawed at their skin, and the underbrush seemed to conspire against them. The very forest itself seemed to come alive with danger, determined to keep them from escaping. Desperation drove them to seek refuge in a small, isolated cabin deep in the woods. They barricaded themselves inside, gasping for breath and clutching each other in terror. Outside, the creature circled the cabin, its eyes glowing through the windows. It was relentless, as if it were part of the very forest itself, an embodiment of nature's wrath. As dawn broke, the creature's presence began to fade. It retreated into the depths of the forest, leaving the teenagers shaken but alive. They ventured cautiously outside, their eyes scanning the quiet woods. Elias, the hermit, had vanished, leaving behind only his warning and the lingering fear of the night's horrors. But as they walked back to their campsite, they discovered something that sent a shiver down their spines. Laid out in the dirt were cryptic symbols, etched into the ground with an eerie precision. It was a message from Elias, a final warning. The group of teenagers left the forest, forever changed by their encounter with the Watcher in the woods. They had crossed the thin line between myth and reality, and they now understood the true power of nature's wrath. As they drove away from the forest, they couldn't help but wonder about Elias, the hermit who had known the danger that lurked in the woods. Perhaps he had once been just like them, a curious traveler who had stumbled upon the terrifying truth of the silent, unforgiving forest, and had chosen to become its guardian, sacrificing his own sanity for the sake of warning others. The Watcher in the woods remained a chilling legend, a creature that lurked in the darkest corners of the forest, waiting for the next group of unsuspecting travelers to cross its path. The silent, foreboding woods held their secrets close, and those who dared to enter would always be haunted by the haunting presence of the Watcher. Echoes of the abyss. Deep within the heart of the town, hidden beneath layers of history and silence, lay the ancient, abandoned mines. For years, their ominous presence had been a whispered legend among the locals, a place where brave urban explorers ventured to seek thrills and unravel mysteries. Laura was one of those explorers, driven by her insatiable curiosity and her desire to uncover the secrets of the past. On a cloudy afternoon, Laura convinced her reluctant friend, Brian, to accompany her into the depths of the mines. The entrance was an eerie black maw, the walls covered in damp, glistening rock. They carried flashlights and backpacks filled with supplies, hoping to document their journey and perhaps make a discovery that would set them apart from other explorers. As they descended deeper into the mines, the walls seemed to close in around them, and the air grew heavy with moisture and a tangible sense of foreboding. The only sounds were the echoes of their footsteps and the occasional drip of water from above. The deeper they went, the more intricate the tunnels became, like a labyrinth carved by an unknown hand. Laura noticed peculiar carvings on the walls, etched into the rock with astonishing precision. The symbols were unlike anything she had ever seen, and their meaning remained a mystery. These carvings must hold the key to the mine's secrets, Laura whispered to Brian, her excitement growing. Brian, however, was growing increasingly uneasy. He didn't share Laura's enthusiasm for the unknown, and the oppressive darkness of the mines was starting to take its toll on his nerves. Suddenly, the earth shook, and a deafening roar echoed through the tunnels. The ground beneath them trembled, and rocks rained down from above, sealing the entrance to the mines in a violent cave-in. Laura and Brian were trapped. Panic set in as they realized the gravity of their situation. The mines were a labyrinth with no clear way out, and their supplies were limited. They had no choice but to press on, hoping to find another exit. As they delved deeper into the mines, the carvings on the walls grew more elaborate and cryptic. Laura tried to decipher their meaning, convinced that they held the key to their escape. Their footsteps echoed through the tunnels, creating an eerie symphony of sounds that seemed to mock their predicament. Time lost meaning as they wandered the dark, twisting passages, their desperation growing with each passing hour. Then, as they turned a corner, they encountered something that sent chills down their spines. A massive chamber lay before them, its walls adorned with an intricate network of carvings. At the center of the chamber stood an ancient relic, a stone tablet with inscriptions that seemed to pulse with a strange energy. As Laura approached the relic, she felt a powerful presence in the room, an entity that seemed to resonate with the carvings on the walls. It was ancient and malevolent, and it had been awakened by their intrusion. A voice echoed through their minds, a chilling whisper that seemed to come from the depths of the earth itself. "You have trespassed into the realm of the forgotten," it hissed. Laura and Brian tried to flee, but the entity's power was too great. It manifested before them, a shadowy figure with eyes that burned like embers. It moved with an unnatural grace, its form shifting and contorting. The entity revealed its purpose: to guard the minds and protect the secrets hidden within. It had lain dormant for centuries, but Laura and Brian's intrusion had awakened it from its slumber. In a desperate bid for survival, Laura held up the relic, the stone tablet pulsing with energy. The entity recoiled, its form flickering and fading. The relic, it seemed, held power over the ancient being. With the entity weakened, Laura and Brian made their escape, retracing their steps through the treacherous tunnels. They emerged from the mines, gasping for breath and covered in dirt and sweat, but alive. As they looked back at the sealed entrance to the mines, they couldn't help but wonder about the carvings, the relic, and the ancient entity that still lurked within. The mines held a darkness and a power beyond their comprehension, and the echoes of the abyss would forever haunt their memories. Laura and Brian emerged from their ordeal forever changed, with a newfound respect for the lure of the unknown and the depths of fear that lay hidden in the darkest corners of the world. The mines would remain a place of mystery and dread, a testament to the relentless pursuit of knowledge and the price one must pay for trespassing into the realm of the forgotten. The Unseen Visitor. The quaint local bed and breakfast, nestled on the outskirts of town, had always been a haven for travelers seeking a peaceful retreat from the hustle and bustle of city life. But in recent months, a shadow had fallen over the charming establishment, as guests had inexplicably vanished without a trace. The once thriving business was now shrouded in whispers and fear. Helen, the owner of the bed and breakfast, had seen the livelihood she had built over the years crumble before her eyes. She was determined to uncover the truth behind the disappearances that were slowly but surely driving her business into ruin. Desperate for answers, she turned to Detective James, a seasoned investigator known for his tenacity in solving the most perplexing cases. Together, they embarked on a journey that would unravel the mysteries hidden within the walls of the bed and breakfast. The disappearance of the most recent guest, a young woman named Emily, served as the catalyst for their investigation. She had checked in with a bright smile, excited for a weekend getaway, and had never been seen again. Detective James began his inquiry by examining the guest book, where the names of the vanished visitors were etched in chilling succession. Each entry seemed to be a harbinger of dread, an ominous foretelling of their fate. Helen recounted a chilling tale passed down through generations, an entity that haunted the bed and breakfast, lurking in the shadows, feeding on the souls of the unsuspecting guests. She spoke of haunting visions that had plagued her family for centuries, glimpses of a malevolent force that could not be seen by mortal eyes. Determined to uncover the truth, Detective James delved deeper into the bed and breakfast's history. He stumbled upon a hidden diary concealed within the dusty attic, its pages filled with the scribblings of terrified souls who had crossed paths with the spectral entity. The diary revealed a pattern, a sinister cycle of disappearances that stretched back for generations. The entity, known as the Unseen Visitor, fed upon the souls of the living, leaving nothing but empty shells in its wake. Its malevolence seemed boundless, and its hunger insatiable. With each revelation, the noose of fear tightened around Helen and Detective James. They realized they were dealing with a force beyond their comprehension, an entity that existed in the realm of the supernatural. But they were not deterred. As night fell, they decided to set a trap for the Unseen Visitor, determined to confront the entity that had terrorized their lives for so long. They positioned themselves strategically within the bed and breakfast, armed with knowledge from the hidden diary and a resolve to put an end to the cycle of disappearances. The Unseen Visitor did not disappoint, making its presence known with a chilling whisper that echoed through the halls. Its arrival was heralded by a frigid chill that sent shivers down their spines. In the darkness, they glimpsed the entity, a shifting, shadowy figure with eyes that gleamed with malevolence. It moved silently, its form twisting and contorting as it approached its unsuspecting prey. But Helen and Detective James were ready. Armed with knowledge of the entity's weaknesses, they activated a series of protective symbols and lit candles infused with herbs that repelled the Unseen Visitor. The entity recoiled, its form writhing in pain. The room was filled with the sound of its tortured wails as it struggled to maintain its presence. The Unseen Visitor had been trapped by the very knowledge it had sought to keep hidden for centuries. With each passing moment, the entity weakened, its form flickering and fading. Helen and Detective James watched as the malevolent force that had haunted their lives dissipated into the night. As dawn broke, they knew that they had succeeded in breaking the cycle of disappearances that had plagued the bed and breakfast for generations. The unseen visitor had been banished, its insatiable hunger finally sated. Helen and Detective James shared a somber moment, reflecting on the horrors they had uncovered and the sacrifices made to put an end to the entity's reign of terror. The bed and breakfast would no longer be a place of fear and dread, but a sanctuary for those seeking solace and respite. As they gazed at the rising sun, they knew that the unseen visitor's legacy had been extinguished, and the secrets hidden within the walls of the bed and breakfast would remain buried in the past. The shadow over Main Street. Main Street, the heart of the once thriving town, lay eerily silent beneath a blanket of shadows. Its shops, once bustling with life, now stood like forgotten relics of a bygone era. Thomas, a new shop owner, had recently moved to this mysterious town in pursuit of his dream, an antique bookstore of his own. But as he settled into his quaint shop, he couldn't help but notice the peculiar absence of neighboring shop owners. Their storefronts were locked, their windows dark, and an unsettling hush had descended upon Main Street. It was Eliza, a local with a keen eye for the town's hidden secrets, who approached Thomas one evening. She had long been a silent observer of the town's eerie occurrences, and she knew the dark truth that lay hidden beneath the shadows. "You're new here, aren't you?" Eliza said, her voice a whisper filled with warning. Thomas nodded, curiosity mingling with the unease that had begun to gnaw at him. "Yes, I just opened my bookstore a few weeks ago, but something doesn't feel right about this place." Eliza's eyes darted around Main Street, as if the shadows themselves were listening. "You're right. This town holds secrets, and those shadows, they're not what they seem." As night fell, Eliza led Thomas through the deserted streets, the chilling darkness creeping closer with every step. She explained the legend that had haunted the town for generations. The shadows on Main Street harbored monstrous creatures, shapeshifters that feasted on the residents' lives and ambitions. Thomas struggled to comprehend the gravity of Eliza's revelation. Monstrous creatures in our shadows. How is that even possible? Eliza's face grew somber. They are drawn to ambition, to the dreams and desires of those who dare to open their shops on Main Street, but they demand a price in return, the very essence of their victims. As they continued down the dimly lit street, a disquieting presence began to envelop them. The shadows seemed to writhe and shift, taking on grotesque forms that slithered across the pavement. Thomas felt a chill crawl up his spine, and he knew that they were being watched by those lurking within the darkness. Suddenly, a ghastly figure emerged from the shadows, a monstrous creature with eyes that gleamed like cold, malevolent stars. It was a shapeshifter, its form constantly shifting, as if it could not decide what it wanted to be. The creature lunged at them, and Thomas instinctively raised an amulet that he had discovered in his shop, a protective charm with ancient markings. It emitted a soft, ethereal glow, creating a barrier that repelled the creature with a blood-curdling shriek. Eliza seized the opportunity, grabbing Thomas's arm, and together they fled from Main Street, the creature's anguished cries echoing in their wake. Back in the safety of Thomas's bookstore, Eliza explained that the amulet had been crafted by a group of brave individuals who had once stood against the creatures that plagued the town. Their goal had been to protect the residents and preserve their dreams from being devoured by the shapeshifters. Determined to confront the creatures and put an end to their reign of terror, Thomas and Eliza sought out the descendants of the original protectors, forming an alliance against the sinister beings that lurked in the shadows. The showdown on Main Street was a battle between light and darkness, a clash of dreams and nightmares. Armed with the protective amulets, the Alliance confronted the shapeshifters, their courage and unity a beacon of hope against the malevolent forces. In a flurry of grotesque transformations and nightmarish howls, the creatures were forced back into the shadows from whence they came. The town's Main Street was bathed in an otherworldly light as the shadows receded, revealing the true horror that had lurked beneath. With the shapeshifters banished, the town began to heal, its residents awakening from the oppressive grip of the creatures. The abandoned shops on Main Street slowly came back to life as the townsfolk reclaimed their ambitions and dreams. Thomas's bookstore, once a haven of nightmares, became a symbol of hope and resilience. It stood as a testament to the courage of those who had faced the unseen horrors and emerged victorious. As the days passed, Main Street flourished once more, its shops bustling with life and ambition. The shadows that had concealed the town's darkest secrets were now a mere memory, fading with the passage of time. The legend of the shapeshifters became a cautionary tale, a reminder that ambition, while a driving force for success, must be tempered with caution. And Thomas, the new shop owner, knew that he had been forever changed by the horrors he had faced on Main Street. The shadows over Main Street were no longer a source of fear, but a testament to the strength of the human spirit in the face of the unknown. The last train home. The old train station sat on the outskirts of town, its time-worn structure bearing the weight of forgotten memories and bygone eras. Few travelers ventured here anymore, and it was said that the last train home was a relic of a time long past. But for Rachel, a weary traveler in search of solace, the station held an eerie allure that she couldn't resist. On a chilly evening, with the moon casting an otherworldly glow over the desolate platform, Rachel stood before the weathered ticket counter. She had heard whispers about the last train home, a train that took passengers on a journey through their darkest nightmares, forcing them to confront their deepest fears. As she purchased her ticket, Rachel's heart pounded with a mixture of trepidation and curiosity. She had always been haunted by her own fears, and the prospect of facing them head-on was both terrifying and strangely appealing. The train arrived with a deafening screech of metal against metal, its carriages bathed in an eerie blue light that seemed to emanate from within. The conductor, an enigmatic figure in a sharply tailored uniform, extended a gloved hand to help Rachel aboard. "Welcome," he whispered, his voice carrying a disconcerting air of detachment. The interior of the train was unlike any Rachel had ever seen. The walls were adorned with ornate, antique mirrors that distorted her reflection, making her appear as a grotesque caricature of herself. The windows were shrouded in thick, velvety curtains that concealed the world outside. As the train pulled away from the station, Rachel couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The rhythmic clatter of the wheels on the tracks seemed to reverberate through her very soul. She knew that there was no turning back now. Strange occurrences began to unfold within the train's dimly lit carriages. Shadows danced along the walls, taking on grotesque shapes that seemed to mock Rachel's deepest insecurity. The air grew thick with whispers, each one a fragment of her darkest thoughts. Rachel's heart raced as she saw ghostly passengers materialize in the seats around her. Their hollow eyes bore into her soul, reflecting her own fears and regrets. They whispered secrets she had long buried, dredging up memories she had desperately tried to forget. As the train hurtled through the darkened tunnels of her mind, Rachel was forced to confront her worst nightmares. She relived the moments of her life that had left scars on her soul, the loss of loved ones, the mistakes she could never undo, the fears that had always held her back. The conductor, his face obscured by the shadows, watched Rachel with an unsettling intensity. He seemed to know her better than she knew herself, guiding her through the labyrinth of her own fears. As the journey continued, Rachel's sense of reality began to blur. She could no longer distinguish between the train's interior and the recesses of her own mind. The boundaries of time and space became fluid, and she lost all sense of direction. Finally, in a moment of stark clarity, Rachel realized the truth. The last train home was not a means of escaping her fears. It was a journey to the heart of her fears, a relentless exploration of the darkest corners of her soul. Desperation gripped her as she sought to escape the torment that surrounded her. She reached for the curtains, pulling them back to reveal the world outside, a desolate landscape of twisted trees and gnarled branches. It was a place devoid of life, a reflection of her own inner turmoil. With a trembling hand, Rachel turned to confront the conductor, to demand an end to her torment. But what she saw sent a shiver down her spine. The conductor's face, once hidden in shadow, now bore a haunting resemblance to her own. His eyes were her eyes, filled with the same fear and regret that had plagued her for so long. He was not a separate entity, but a manifestation of her own inner demons. In that moment of revelation, Rachel understood that she was the conductor of her own fears, the architect of her own nightmares. The last train home was not a means of escape, but a mirror that forced her to confront the darkness within herself. As the train pulled into the station, the mirrors lining the walls shattered, releasing a blinding light that engulfed Rachel. She emerged from the train, shaken but changed, no longer running from her fears but facing them with newfound strength. The old train station stood silent, as it always had, its secrets hidden within the shadows. Rachel had journeyed through the darkest recesses of her soul and emerged on the other side, forever altered by the experience. The last train home had taken her on a terrifying journey, but it had also shown her the path to self-acceptance and inner peace. As she walked away from the station, the echoes of her nightmares fading into the distance, Rachel knew that she would never be the same again. The Curse of Old Mill. The old mill, a crumbling relic of a bygone era, stood like a haunted sentinel at the edge of the town. Its towering, skeletal frame loomed over the landscape, casting a shadow that seemed to stretch into eternity. For as long as anyone could remember, the mill had been abandoned, its history shrouded in mystery. Nora, a young and ambitious historian with a passion for unearthing forgotten stories, had always been drawn to the mill. Its decaying timbers and crumbling stones whispered secrets of a time long past, and she couldn't resist the urge to uncover its hidden history. One chilly autumn day, armed with her research notes and an insatiable curiosity, Nora ventured to the mill. She had heard whispers among the town's elderly residents of a curse that had plagued the mill for generations, a curse that had been lost to time. As she explored the ruins, the air was thick with the scent of decay and the echo of footsteps that had long since faded away. She found herself drawn deeper into the mill's dark recesses, where the walls bore witness to the passage of time in the form of weathered graffiti and crumbling memories. It was there, in a forgotten corner of the mill, that Nora discovered an old, leather-bound journal. Its pages were yellowed with age, and its entries were filled with cryptic symbols and faded ink. The journal spoke of a curse that had befallen the mill centuries ago, a curse born of tragedy and betrayal. As she delved deeper into the journal's entries, Nora felt a chill creep over her. The curse, it seemed, had not merely been a superstition, but a malevolent force that had left a stain on the mill's history. The curse was said to bring forth a vengeful spirit, a harbinger of despair, whose wrath could only be quelled by an act of selfless sacrifice. Determined to unravel the curse's dark legacy, Nora returned to town to seek the wisdom of its oldest resident, a reclusive, elderly woman known to harbor the town's deepest secrets. The woman, her eyes clouded with age and a solemn expression etched on her face, spoke of the curse with a mixture of fear and regret. She revealed the tragic tale of two lovers torn apart by jealousy and greed, their fates forever intertwined with the mill. Nora learned that the vengeful spirit, once a young woman who had been wronged and betrayed, had been trapped within the mill's decaying walls. Her tormented soul sought retribution, and the curse demanded a life in exchange for her release. Determined to break the curse and free the vengeful spirit, Nora embarked on a journey to uncover the spirit's true identity. She discovered an old locket hidden within the mill, its delicate chain bearing a portrait of the spirit in her youth, a hauntingly beautiful young woman with sorrowful eyes. As Nora held the locket in her hand, a cold breeze swept through the mill, and the vengeful spirit materialized before her. The spirit's spectral form was ethereal and translucent, her eyes mirroring the anguish of centuries of suffering. The spirit's mournful voice echoed through the mill, recounting her tragic tale of love, betrayal, and the curse that had bound her to the world of the living. She implored Nora to help her find redemption and peace, to break the curse that had imprisoned her for so long. Nora's heart ached with empathy as she listened to the spirit's sorrowful tale. She knew that the curse could only be broken by an act of selfless sacrifice, a deed that would redeem the spirit and set her free. With a heavy heart, Nora returned to the town and revealed the curse's true nature to its residents. Together, they made the difficult decision to offer a willing sacrifice to lift the curse and free the vengeful spirit from her eternal torment. As the townsfolk gathered at the mill, the air grew heavy with anticipation. The vengeful spirit, her form now luminous and radiant, appeared before them. With tears in her eyes, she watched as a brave soul willingly stepped forward, offering their life to break the curse. The sacrifice was made, and in that selfless act, the curse was shattered. The mill's decaying timbers and crumbling stones seemed to sigh in relief as the vengeful spirit was finally set free. With a bittersweet smile, the spirit thanked Nora and the townsfolk for their courage and compassion. As she ascended into the ethereal realm, her form dissolving into a cascade of shimmering light, the mill stood silent and still, its haunted legacy finally put to rest. Nora, though forever haunted by the memories of the curse and the vengeful spirit, knew that she had uncovered a forgotten story and brought closure to a chapter of the town's history. As she watched the mill fade into the distance, its ruins no longer bearing the weight of a curse, she couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. The curse of the old mill had been broken, and the vengeful spirit had found her long-awaited redemption. Nightmare at Crescent Lake. as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the serene Crescent Lake. A sense of anticipation hung in the warm evening air. Mia and her group of friends had always heard the town's legends about the lake, stories of hidden treasures, mysterious disappearances, and an ancient creature lurking in its depths. Tonight, they were determined to put those legends to the test. Their campfire crackled and danced, sending sparks spiraling into the night. Laughter filled the air as they roasted marshmallows and shared ghost stories. It was a perfect summer evening, and the shimmering lake seemed inviting under the moon's gentle glow. "Who's up for a night swim?" Mia suggested with a mischievous grin. The group exchanged glances, half tempted and half apprehensive about the idea. Then, the adventurous one of the bunch couldn't resist. "I'm in. What's the worst that could happen?" With that, the friends shed their clothes and made their way into the cool water. The lake's surface rippled under the silvery moonlight as they swam further from the shore, their laughter echoing across the water. But as the minutes passed, the atmosphere began to change. The once calm waters now seemed to hold a sense of foreboding, and a chill ran down Mia's spine. She glanced back at the shore, but something was wrong. Their campfire had vanished, leaving them in pitch darkness. Panic spread among the group as they realized they were disoriented in the inky blackness of the lake. They called out to each other, but their voices seemed swallowed by the night. It was as if the lake itself had conspired to separate them. Mia's heart raced as she swam toward what she believed was the shore. Her fingers brushed against something slimy and cold beneath the water's surface, and she stifled a scream. As her eyes adjusted to the dim light, she saw the nightmarish silhouette of a creature lurking beneath her, a grotesque, aquatic abomination with razor-sharp teeth. She kicked and thrashed, breaking free from the creature's grasp and clawing her way onto the shore. Gasping for breath, she searched frantically for her friends. In the distance, she could hear their terrified cries, each voice growing fainter as they were dragged beneath the water. Mia was alone, shivering in the moonlight, her friends lost to the depths of Crescent Lake. The legends had come to life, and the ancient creature that had haunted the town's stories was real. Determined to find her friends and confront the nightmare lurking in the lake, Mia armed herself with a fallen branch and crept back into the water. The lake's surface was now eerily still, and a sense of dread hung heavy in the air. With each step, the water grew deeper, and Mia's fear intensified. She felt as if 100 unseen eyes were watching her from below. Suddenly, a hand burst from the water and clamped onto her ankle with an icy grip. She screamed in terror, striking at the unseen assailant with her makeshift weapon. The water churned with frenzied violence, and a grotesque, scaled creature emerged, a monstrous amalgamation of fish and human features. Its eyes, cold and dead, locked onto Mia's, and it hissed with a guttural, unearthly sound. Mia fought desperately, her heart pounding as the creature attempted to drag her beneath the surface. With all her strength, she wrenched free and made a desperate swim for the shore. The creature pursued her relentlessly, its long, gnarled fingers nearly grasping her ankle again. Reaching the safety of the shore, Mia collapsed, gasping for air. The creature lingered at the water's edge, its hateful gaze locked on her. Mia knew she couldn't stay by the lake any longer. Her friends were gone, taken by the nightmare of Crescent Lake. She stumbled through the dark woods, haunted by the echoing cries of her friends and the cold, lifeless eyes of the creature. The legends were no longer just stories, they were warnings, and Mia was the only one who had survived the nightmarish ordeal. As dawn broke, Mia finally emerged from the woods, her clothes soaked and her heart heavy. The lake lay silent and still, hiding its secrets beneath the tranquil surface. The town's legends had proven all too true, and Mia knew that the creature from the depths of Crescent Lake would forever haunt her dreams.